In less than 1 month, China conducts its second large-scale military exercises around Taiwan. Ferries linking Taiwan's outlying islands with China resumed service after a 3-year pandemic hiatus. Amid worsening droughts, a new tariff on water consumption takes aim at the country's biggest users. Plus, a wave of air pollution covers Taiwan's southern city of Kaohsiung at the weekend. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Taiwan has condemned China for holding its second military combat drills around the island in less than a month. The Defense Ministry says it detected 57 warplanes and 4 naval ships near the country's borders. Of the group, 28 aircraft breached the country's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The ADIZ is not sovereign airspace, but is used by the military as a buffer zone for defensive purposes. The latest incursion included 3 drones, over 20 fighter jets, 2 bombers, and a radar plane. For more on the drills, a reporter, Jaime Okan, spoke to Ben Lewis, a defense expert in Washington, D.C., who tracks Taiwan's ADIZ activity.
What can you tell us about the recent incursion, and what do you think prompted this reaction?
It was a diverse grouping, mostly fighter aircraft, but it was notable that the drone took an extended flight route. We've never seen a drone do that before. And I think it's most likely that this is kind of a coalescent response to what seems to be a kind of a busy time for U.S.-Taiwan relations in the past couple of weeks. So we had the NDAA signed, and then, of course, on December 25th, we had a very large incursion, one of the largest of last year. But we also had Volcano anti-tank systems. That arms sale was confirmed. The USS Chunhoon transited the Taiwan Strait on Thursday. And I think it's kind of a combination of those things that the PLA is responding to in this instance. They announced these exercises this morning through Chinese state media. And what the Chinese state media actually said was they listed those things specifically, but they also mentioned that analysts in the mainland were hoping that the newly elected House Speaker of the United States Congress, McCarthy, would take notice to the message that they were sending. So all in all, I think it's a kind of a combo deal of responses that kind of turned into a very sizable amount of aircraft in the ADIZ.
Can you talk about how China is using these drones in these types of operations?
So China has made an effort to develop modern advanced drones to support both its naval aviation, its ground forces, and its air force. And I think the general idea is with all automation is burden sharing. So now you can have fighters operating without a manned support aircraft. You have a UAV flying with them, essentially a permanent wingman for that fighter. And in general, I think they want to have experience using drones because we've seen how effective drones are over the last decade, especially in the last year. And so in general, I think we're going to see more drones as we go forward. Since drones started being publicly tracked by the MND on September 5th of 2022, they've made up around 10% of the amount of aircraft we've seen.
That was Ben Lewis speaking about the recent Chinese military activity around Taiwan. Ferry services between several Taiwanese islands in China has resumed. That's after a long hiatus brought on by the COVID pandemic. But as John Van Tres reports, China's new COVID surge could complicate the reopening.
For the first time in 3 years, boats like this one are welcoming passengers aboard. This ferry links Taiwan's Matsu Islands with the nearby Chinese coast. Many locals have family on both sides, making this half-hour boat ride an important link. But the COVID pandemic saw crossings halted, leaving people separated from their loved ones. It's been the same story on the islands of Kinmen, which lie within sight of the Chinese city of Xiamen. Now, 3 years on, borders are open again. And the ferries are running again too, just in time to allow families to gather for the Lunar New Year. Given the recent COVID surge in China, only residents of these islands, and their Chinese spouses or children, are allowed on the ferries for now. And they're tested for COVID as soon as they arrive from China. On the first crossing to Kinmen, 7 passengers tested positive. Local officials are calling for the ferry service to adopt the more rigorous testing rules already in place for travelers arriving from China by air. Medical experts also suggest testing arrivals from China for COVID antibodies.
我觉得出来的时候，如果在入境检测的时候可以加入抗体检测，也就是说，如果他有抗体，表示他已经康复有保护力，那这样的进入这个台湾也好，或进入其他世界各地也好，就不会有威胁。
Taiwan is already registering tens of thousands of cases a day, and officials in Kinmen and Matsu want to keep their islands from becoming a backdoor, letting in a new COVID surge. Ethan Pan and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A self-proclaimed Chinese spy has had his asylum claim rejected by an Australian appeals court. Wang Liqiang caused uproar in Australia and Taiwan with lurid claims of interfering in Taiwan's elections. The rejection of his bid for asylum means he will be deported from Australia. The court found that Wang had defrauded an Australian national before entering the country. It also cast doubt on his claims of espionage, finding no evidence to back them up. Wang made international headlines in 2019 after he told Australian media that he had worked as a spy for the Chinese Communist Party in Hong Kong and Taiwan. His account led to the arrest of 2 Chinese nationals in Taiwan. Prosecutors quietly shelved allegations of espionage against the pair, but are appealing a decision finding them not guilty on charges of money laundering. The acting chair of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, has said the party must reflect after a by-election defeat in Taipei.
选举过后，又是新的一天的开始啊！我想我们还是重新的，希望说能够在各项的这个不管是政策，能够更接地气。那另外在我们的组织文宣这个部分，也有很多我们要检讨的地方。
The DPP's Enoch Wu lost out to Wang Hongwei of the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, in a race for the Taipei legislative seat. Wang won with 52% of the vote compared to Wu's 47%. The by-election was triggered after the KMT's Jiang Wan-an won the Taipei mayoral race in last year's local elections, where the DPP also suffered heavy losses. Taiwan is introducing a new tariff on large water users. It's hoped the measure will prevent the waste of an increasingly important resource. Reinhold Kilpatrick has this report.
Like other commodities and basic necessities, the price of water is due to increase, but not for your average consumer. Starting February 1st, big water users in Taiwan will be subject to an additional tariff called a water consumption fee. It comes on top of their monthly water bill, but only during the dry season, which began in November and is expected to last into April.
那耗水费是针对每个月用水9000度，也就是9000吨以上的用水大户来开征。那这个每一度的耗水费是课征3块钱。
Between 1,700 and 2,200 companies are expected to be affected by the tariff. Those hit the hardest include industrial powerhouses like TSMC, China Steel, and Formosa Plastics.
当初我们设立这个公司的时候，并没有预设说以后会有耗水费，所以我们以前也做了很多的努力，等于说是不管好学生、坏学生，通通都打一处，对不对？这样子做好像没有那么恰当啊。
For the first 2 years, the government will collect just half the tariff amount. Afterward, these can also be reduced to just $1 Taiwan per cubic meter if a certain portion of the water used is recycled. Authorities hope this will incentivize firms to invest in conservation and recycling during the buffer period. For some, it's a manageable burden.
因为我们公司本身我们的用水的回收率很高，符合它的条件可以做一些优惠减免。对我们来讲，一个月增加38.5万应该是 OK 的。
Droughts have worsened in Taiwan in recent years due to a dearth of rain-bringing typhoons. Lawmakers have called on authorities to increase the country's water prices in order to encourage conservation. Despite its relative scarcity here, the price of water set by the government is even lower than the cost of production, sitting at around 1/5 of the price in neighboring Japan. Bumping these up is a potentially unpopular move, but ensuring the biggest users shoulder the burden could make it easier to swallow. Ryan Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Air quality in the southern city of Kaohsiung reached concerning levels at the weekend. Sally Jensen takes a look at this ongoing problem.
A hazy day in downtown Kaohsiung. The southern port city is notorious as one of Taiwan's pollution hotspots, and air quality has dropped once again. On city streets, motor vehicles were being checked for emission levels, as transportation accounts for almost 40% of the country's air pollutants. Around half comes from industry and what's wafted over from China. An industrial city, Kaohsiung ranks among the worst in Taiwan for air quality. It gets 10,000 metric tons per year of PM2.5, a measure for air pollution, and often exceeds World Health Organization limits. With air pollution detrimental to the environment and human health, current regulations in Taiwan only force large industries to ramp down production when air quality reaches the purple or dangerous levels. And in Kaohsiung, authorities are tackling emissions from both industry and transport.
针对工厂的部分也有进场去降低他们的降载减排哈，包括新达电厂停2减2，那两个减2是低于50%，大概48%左右。那对于交通的移动员的部分呢，我们有拦车检查。
The authorities may be able to wash away the smog problem for now. But in the long term, Kaohsiung's bad air will need a more permanent solution. Leon Lien and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
The yellow-throated martin is a protected species in Taiwan, but now officials at Taiwan's Jade Mountain National Park are concerned about an increase in reported sightings. Authorities say the small mammals are foraging for food scraps left by visitors to the park, but they say that martins eating human food in the long term raises their risk of infectious disease, and their closer proximity to humans also makes it easier for any diseases they are carrying to transfer to people. The park has now begun removing all its garbage cans. It's also encouraging visitors to take all trash and leftover food with them when they leave. Coming up, travelers crowd airports across China after years-long quarantine requirements end. But not everyone is looking forward to the return of Chinese tourists. Find out why after the break.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030.
A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
For more news from Taiwan and around the world, head to TaiwanPlus.com and download the TaiwanPlus app.
你看到它的第一眼，你就知道它是你的狗，这是一种很奇妙的感觉。
毛小孩就是小孩啊，一样的。
他们就是玩到累了，然后休息一下，然后起来再继续玩。
我发现我们的生活好像不能没有狗。
我们就说，其实他们是派来救赎我们的。
快好了，快好了，最后一个了。
饲主其实都很相信我们，因为很相信我们，他对我们就会抱有很大的期望。
他本来不吃饭，经过一番努力之后，他回到他原本该有快乐的样子。哇，我超级开心！
的愿景就让每一只动物都可以获得好的专科治疗服务。
你要再陪我走10年，好不好？好的话，再星期快点。
Pup Nation, every Monday, 8 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. The Speaker of Paraguay's Chamber of Deputies has met with President Tsai Ing-wen. Carlos Maria Lopez praised Taiwan and Paraguay's long-standing ties and thanked Taiwan for its support for scholarship programs between the countries. President Tsai welcomed Lopez to Taiwan. She says she hopes his visit can lead to what she calls a big step forward in bilateral ties. Paraguay is one of 14 countries that have full diplomatic ties with Taiwan, but Lopez's visit comes at a time when those ties may be under threat. Paraguay's main opposition candidate for president has said he'll cut off relations with Taiwan if he wins April's general election. Supporters of Brazil's far-right former president, Jair Bolsonaro, stormed the country's Congress and presidential palace on Sunday. An estimated 3,000 rioters smashed furniture and windows in the National Congress and Supreme Court buildings in Brazil's capital. The siege has been compared to the riot at the United States Capitol building on January 6, 2021. That attack was carried out by supporters of then-President Donald Trump following his 2020 re-election loss. Bolsonaro lost a tightly contested presidential election last October. The former president, who is currently in Florida, has yet to fully concede. Brazil's new president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, took office a week ago. He has pledged to punish the rioters. At least 400 people have since been arrested. Taiwan has been invited to join the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, or IPAC. Here's Democratic Progressive Party lawmaker Fan Yun announcing the news on Sunday.
这2天，我收到 iPad 的来信，他们刚通过邀请台湾成为会员，也邀请我成为共同的主席团成员。这是我们过去这几个月努力的成果，这也是台湾外交的一大突破。
Fan and Taiwan People's Party lawmaker Zhang Qilu have been invited to join the alliance's group of co-chairs. The co-chair group currently includes 56 lawmakers from around the world. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio and EU lawmaker Reinhard Bütikofer are among its members. IPAC describes itself as an international cross-party group of legislators working to reform how democratic countries approach China. The group has been outspoken on China's persecution of Uyghurs in Xinjiang and Hong Kong's national security law. For more on IPAC and its invitation for Taiwan to become a member, our reporter Stash Butler spoke to John Ian Chung, a political scientist at the National University of Singapore.
How much power does IPAC actually have? I mean, how much does it affect the various governments that its members belong to? How much does it affect those governments' policies towards China?
I think it can have an effect on certain particular issues. So I think some of the attention on the Uyghurs, some of the attention on the police posts that the PRC has been setting up overseas has come through IPAC. They are an influential grouping. They aren't the be-all and end-all of China policy. There are obviously other groups, other interests, other forms of lobbying happening, but they are a coordinated voice that tends to have an interest in human rights issues, which is important to have.
And what's the significance of Taiwan or Taiwanese lawmakers being invited to join? What does that mean?
So it means a couple of things. One is that Taiwan would have a more direct voice to this body, and I think that would mean a lot in a situation where China is putting increasing pressure on Taiwan. It lets Taiwan put across its interests and its views in a more direct fashion. I think the other is a recognition that Taiwan is democracy. Like I said, all the members of IPAC come from democracies. So to have Taiwan being part of it is a recognition of Taiwan being the democracy that it is. And I think in addition, membership puts Taiwan on equal standing with the other legislatures that have representatives on IPAC.
How important, briefly, is this kind of, parliamentary diplomacy, not on the level of governments, but rather the legislatures below them? How important is that for Taiwan?
I'd say in general, this parliamentary diplomacy tends to be overshadowed by what the executive branch does in most places, but they do provide an important function in terms of the cross-fertilization of ideas, the ability to work together, especially in democracies where legislatures are a co-equal part of government. To use parliamentary diplomacy gives Taiwan an additional channel that can help compensate somewhat for its lack of official recognition.
That was political scientist Jia Yan-chong speaking to TaiwanPlus reporter Stash Butler. Airports across China saw an influx of people on Sunday as the country officially lifted its quarantine requirements for incoming travelers. The change is also big news for popular destinations outside of China, which are anticipating a wave of Chinese tourists who are eager to once again travel abroad. Yu Jinghua has this report.
At an airport in Beijing on Sunday, families look forward to long-awaited reunions. It's the first time in 3 years that inbound travelers to the country have been spared quarantine.
Our daughter is coming in today because there's no quarantine. So we're just thrilled that China has done away with the quarantine policy. And that's why she chose this flight for today, because it's the first day when people can just come right off the airplane and go home.
The surge of travelers wasn't just at airports. Border checkpoints between Hong Kong and China are also busy once more. A shuttle service between Hong Kong and the mainland Chinese city of Zhuhai has resumed 24-hour service. Tickets for midnight travel on Sunday were sold out.
到咗而家1月8號正式冇咗隔離，真係好開心啊！飲早茶呢個係一定要做嘅，第一件事係飲早茶，同埋探下啲 friend 咯，同埋見下即係抽時間陪下父母咯，即係出外咗都接近1年啦，好激動啊！等唔切啦，係嘅。就算係即係8號凌晨嘅，就算係好早都好，翻到去可能即係咩高鐵啊冇都好，都係想趕住翻去嘅。
With quarantine-free travel into China now reinstated, authorities are also allowing Chinese people to freely travel abroad. Once a common sight at famous attractions, Chinese tourists have been conspicuously absent abroad during the pandemic. But now, many places are gearing up to welcome them back once again. For many Southeast Asian countries, Chinese tourists are a big source of revenue. And while many countries are asking visitors from China to provide a negative COVID-19 test before entry, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and the Philippines are welcoming the visitors with open arms. However, not everyone is happy with the decision.
Kalau menurut saya pribadi, saat ini kan memang kondisi Cina itu lagi sangat tinggi COVID-nya. Bahkan kalau berita terakhir, rumah sakit aja sudah overwhelmed dengan pasien-pasien COVID di sana. Jadi sebaiknya pemerintah kita memberikan restriction sangat tinggi untuk itu. Jangan sampai wisatawan Cina masuk ke Indonesia dulu.
But for some business owners, Chinese tourists are a welcome sight.
โควิดก็กลัวค่ะ อยากทำงานก็อยากทำ กลัวทั้งโควิดแล้วก็กลัวทั้งที่จะอดค่ะ แต่พี่ก็อยากให้เขาเข้ามานะคะ โอเค พี่ก็อยากได้ลูกค้า
China's border opening is the last step in the rapid ending of its years-long zero-COVID policy. For families reunited at last, and eager Chinese enjoying newfound freedom, it's a blessing. But it's much less clear what the future holds for the world's second-largest economy, and what the lasting effects of its isolation will be. Howard Zhang and Yu Jinghua for TaiwanPlus.
In Taiwan, it's common to see deities paraded around the streets on local temple festival days. But there's one temple in the southern city of Pingdong that does things a little differently for New Year's Day. Philip Broussard has the story.
An orangutan, a hippo, and a camel cross the road. But this isn't the setup to a joke, and they aren't alone. There's also a Formosan black bear, a dinosaur, and even a mosquito. This is the annual animal parade put on by Pingdong City's Jade Emperor Temple. It has over 100 different types of animal that take to the streets every New Year's Day. According to Buddhist legend, the Buddha reincarnated as many different creatures. And the temple says they made these statues to bless the area and bring peace and protection. It's the only parade of its kind in Taiwan, and if you want to see it for yourself, make a note in your calendar now for January 1st, 2024. Chen and Philip Broussard for TaiwanPlus.
Farmers in Penghu have been turning heads. This weekend, they brought out their largest cabbages in a contest to see which is biggest, with the winner being crowned as Cabbage King. More than 20 farmers from the Western Archipelago joined the annual contest on Sunday, which took place in Penghu's Wukan district. The winner produced a cabbage that was 69 centimeters in diameter and weighed a whopping 8.5 kilograms. Wukan is famous for its cabbages, which in addition to their large size are also known for being fresh and sweet. And locals are certainly rooting for them, even traveling from other parts of Penghu's main island to buy the vegetables.
惠安的夹头这种高丽菜种，因为伊啲菜市卖无嘛，讲要卖济啦吼，结果卖等去因菜市种吼，没办法，像那么大，土质无共。
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Remember to download the Taiwan Plus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we leave you with images of the Blacks and Whites Carnival in Colombia. The event is recognized by UNESCO as a piece of intangible cultural heritage. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.